Welcome to Open to Truth. I'm Clinton.
Hi, I'm Tony.
And today, I would like to ask you a series of questions
Great.
about risk.
Sure. Okay.
The notion of risk.
Yeah. Why? Why is this on your mind?
A few experiences have happened to me.
Okay.
Mostly media related.
Okay.
I've watched some film.
You
and
saw
some
risky
shows.
things happen.
I did.
All right.
So some of you might have seen this documentary that's been out on Netflix called Free Solo.
Free Solo. Right.
And
Alex Honnold, is it?
Alex Honnold. I think this was filmed in 2018. He was 32 at the time. He's 34 now. So, yeah, around 30.
It's tough to watch. I watched it on a plane and was on the edge of my seat the whole time, white knuckling. It'll make you sweat watching this thing. You want to explain what it is?
Sure. So, he is a professional rock climber, and he wanted to free solo El Capitan, which is a sheer rock face
Is
in
it the
Yosemite.
biggest in the world? Is that why that was it was his life achievement to do this thing? Is it?
Oh, good question.
This is the biggest
I don't
it can
know what the deal is with that, what stats or accolades that particular
Either way,
rock face
it had never
holds.
been done though.
No, he
right?
was the first. He did complete it.
Yeah.
And free solo means you are scaling it without equipment or the help of another person.
Right. It's just
You're
and the rock.
yeah, you do have chalk.
Yes, for grip and to soak up sweat.
I believe that's it. And you can wear whatever clothing.
You want good shoes. Yeah, you wear shoes, right? He's not doing crazy toe grips
No.
without shoes.
I think they have shoes.
He does toe grips, but with
Yeah.
the shoes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so off the bat, it seems rather insane, right?
Oh, and just to be clear, like it's hundreds and hundreds of feet high.
Oh, yeah, a fall means certain death.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what's...
That's the
At
crucial
stake
part
here.
of the story.
Right,
yeah.
right. So he wants to climb this, in the documentary, he wants to climb this cliff without any safety mechanisms. Now, he's climbed it hundreds of times before. He's done it with ropes and presumably
he's
slept halfway
practiced
up there.
A ton.
He
yeah.
knows the cliff face inside and out. It's actually cool. They draw maps of they have names for all the different little routes and this particular part that's
maneuver
really hard.
that's required. Yeah.
This part's really hard. He's got the whole thing charted out in a notebook, like left thumb here, pivot right hand to grab the thing over there. It's wild.
Well, what's interesting is now that I've over the Christmas break, I got a little Rubik's Cube.
Okay, where is this going? Yeah.
And it's exactly like that for a Rubik's Cube. What seems so complex
Is
and
algorithmic.
mysterious is algorithmic, and I could just do it here and not even really be looking at it except for a few times, and I've just memorized the hand motions.
Yeah.
So I'm not comparing that to what he's doing.
I want to say he's thinking of, he's focused when he's doing it.
Yeah, but in a way, it's a memorized set of moves.
Muscle memory.
And he has the practice, strength, and expertise to perform them.
Right.
It's not like turning a cube.
Which for me begs the question, so he's climbed El Capitan hundreds and hundreds of times successfully. You've done it. You climbed
Without
that
falling.
And we happen to have some ropes on you so that if you fell or made a mistake, you wouldn't die. And he's like, no, I want to do it again without the ropes.
It's a psychological challenge.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. This is the question I'm asking, or that I'd like to ask is, what is risk? And then the follow-up, and then two follow-ups. When is it irrational for me to take a given risk?
Yeah.
And maybe some moral dimensions to it
Totally.
as well. Ought I take risks?
Right, because I found myself almost... I'm sorry, Alex, if you're watching this, but I found myself almost offended as I was watching Free Solo. I mean, equal parts maybe amazed and offended. This guy's clearly doing something incredible, but gosh, it seems like a foolish use, foolish stewardship of the life you've been given. And or especially, I mean, the clincher in the documentary is his girlfriend begging him not to do this, with tears. I'm worried about you. I don't want you to die. And his response is basically, hey, my first love was climbing, not you. And I'm going to continue climbing.
Oh, my goodness.
So there's the question of, is he doing something wrong by putting himself in this kind of situation?
So let's try to get...
Or is it to be admired?
Yeah. Well, no, that was part of my feeling too. But it also seems like he's tapping into something central to the human experience, and this is what he's passionate about. Entering a flow state of sorts where challenge meets ability, and just kind of doing your thing, and that's where happiness is
Right.
for some of us, or maybe all of us.
Yeah, there is something really uplifting or gratifying about seeing him overcome what appears to be just an impossibility. Like when they have those drone shots on him, and it's like, what is he even hanging on to? It looks like you're watching a miracle take place. This crazy man is climbing something that has no grips at all.
His fingers are like thick sausages, dude.
Yeah, he does finger hangs and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So great. So what is risk? I mean, that doesn't seem like that complex of a question to me, because I feel like it's a word we use all the time.
Right.
I have some understanding of what
We definitely
risk
know
is.
how to use the word.
Yeah.
But I think if we tease it out a little bit more,
Let's get clear on it.
Just so we're on the same page, give us some understanding.
You want to take a stab? How would you define risk?
Yeah. Well, I have a certain amount of value or a good that I have.
Okay.
I have something now that I'm like putting on the line, let's say.
Yeah.
Could be a status, maybe just finances, a talent, my well-being.
Utils? Are these utils?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Okay.
That's
I'm
like
trying to grow as a philosopher.
Yeah.
Okay.
A util is like a unit of pleasure.
Right. Okay.
And so I have a certain amount of that in a given situation. I can like put it on the line. What does it mean to risk it? Well, there's a potential cost. There is a likelihood of some event happening, and then the potential gain.
Yeah.
So let's just use that. It's pretty
Okay.
simple, just a 3-part little equation.
And it involves some unknowns.
It does.
Yeah. Those are unknown variables.
Right. So a super easy way to think about risk is in the gambling scenario.
Yeah.
At a casino, you're at the poker table, and you have a poker chip,
Mm-hmm.
and it's worth, let's say, $10, and I'm playing a game with 2-to-1 odds. I put that poker chip on the line. Here's some value that I have. I'm putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular game, it's I lose the whole thing. So the potential cost is exactly what I put out there.
Yeah.
And I stand to gain an additional chip just like it. So I can gain 10. So the potential cost is 10, potential gain is 10, and the likelihood is whatever it happens to be for that poker game.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, that's how I can understand. I'm risking that poker chip by potentially losing it, but potentially gaining.
Right. And right.
It's not always 1-to-1 though, like in that sense where I risk everything that I'm putting on the line necessarily. So, or it's not commensurate in value. That is, some things that I risk don't always match up 1-for-1 monetarily, let's say, like in a game of poker.
Yes. What? Can you tease out for me? Okay, there is the severity of the consequence, like the undesired consequence. In this case, losing your hand of poker and losing your chip. There's that. There's the chance that will happen, and those two together combine to produce the total risk value. I mean, I'm just thinking. So, Alex climbing this mountain, El Capitan. Is it? I don't know if it's weird to put numbers on this, but let's say
Sure.
he gets a risk score of, for him, it's 10 out of 100. It's not that risky. I don't know how the scale is going to work. But,
Sure.
but for
Okay.
me, you run the algorithm, and because he's done it so many times, although the consequence is great, if he falls, he dies, the chance of him actually falling, very low, because he's an extremely good climber.
Yeah.
Whereas me, severity of consequence would still be death, and the chance is a lot higher that is going to happen if I try
Right.
to climb that mountain. So my risk score, 100. Certain chance of death, probably.
Yeah, so
Right?
in this case, well, yeah, you're just noting that the likelihood part of the equation is relative in this particular case based on skill level.
Yes.
Whereas let's say there's a mutual fund out there that is projecting this is the growth over this amount of time,
Yep.
and you and I approach that mutual fund with the same level of risk.
Yes.
Hopefully they're not like changing the actuarial tables in that way based on their customers. But
Yeah.
I mean, different endeavors may have a skill component that raises or lowers the likelihood based on who's participating.
Which is, I just think that's worth acknowledging, because sometimes there's a temptation to see a dangerous feat being performed and to say, boy, that's very risky.
Yeah.
Not always true. If it's a professional who has done this thing, say they've done it 1,000,000 times, can you get that risk all the way to zero? Probably not. You can get it pretty darn close if you've perfected this particular maneuver, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I just want to be careful that both of those things need to be considered before you call something risky. Like, how severe, how dangerous is it? What's the severe consequence? But then also, what's the chance of that actually happening?
That's good. So that's important to remember as we go about our lives and perform this computation.
Yeah.
But also, so you noted the relativity that can happen within likelihood.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of relativity that happens within the perceived cost and perceived value that I would gain. So for me, I think a lot of the discomfort and then judgment of Alex as being foolish comes from I don't share the perceived value, the
good.
upside.
Okay, great.
You know?
Yeah.
I can imagine standing on top of the world of El Capitan and like, I've done it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't drive me.
Certainly doesn't motivate you to go train as a climber.
No,
it's
it doesn't.
not that good of an outcome for you.
No, but for him, it is.
That was pinnacle of his life, probably. Sorry. I don't mean to say it's all downhill from there, Alex. I'm sure you've gone on to do great things.
Right. So I think that's important to consider too, that
Yeah.
each individual might have a different perceived value or perceived cost.
Yeah.
Some people, and this is where we get into the question about the rationality. So what makes taking a certain risk irrational? So there's like the objective level where we might want to say certain behaviors are irrational.
Yeah.
And then just the subjective level. So some people think of the perceived cost as much higher than it really is.
Yes.
So consider the hypochondriac, let's say,
Okay.
who has probably inordinately placed higher percentages or on the chance of getting sick by going out in public.
Yes.
And so refrain from doing it and just live an isolated life.
Yeah.
That to me is an irrational risk aversion.
Right.
So
yeah, because you're saying that there are... No, tease that out. I'm not following. Why are you saying that's irrational?
well, I think, or we can just say that they've miscalculated the likelihood.
Of getting sick?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And so they have this life behavior of risk aversion
Yes.
that is maybe unnecessary or is too limiting. They're missing out on a lot of these potential goods that come from being in public.
Yeah. Yeah.
From mishandling that algorithm.
So, but is that something that's happening for them on a conscious level? I mean, we keep referencing this algorithm that somehow is being calculated anytime we engage in risky
I
behavior.
think we're doing it all the time, dude.
Right?
So I just was thinking of this. Another reason I wanted to do this podcast was I was just driving to work. Our workplace is on the 60-mile-per-hour road, and it's pretty busy. Like,
Yeah,
it's
is.
a main
It can be busy.
thoroughfare in the community,
And they move quick.
and we got to make this left turn in there. And there are times when I have cut that left turn pretty close to oncoming
Trying
traffic.
to find a gap in the traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, me too.
I would just be curious on what you think about the rationality of that, of cutting it close, let's say.
Yeah.
I might save myself 25 seconds,
Yeah.
and I dart in there, and a car zooms by. That's probably super dangerous. But the potential cost is death. Like,
Death,
I'll get
right.
destroyed
It's-
in a car wreck.
If you miscalculate it or something
The
happens...
potential gain is really low.
25
all things
seconds.
considered, 25 extra seconds. Let's say a minute even.
Think how often you fritter that away, and here you're really willing to risk your life just to get those 25 seconds back.
But I think the reason I do it so often, just to be fair to myself, is that I think of the probability of the turn going wrong as being
So
super
astronomically
low.
low. It
Like,
could.
My car would have to suddenly get like, and
Yeah,
like the brakes engaged.
Get stuck.
That'd be awful, dude. That's scary.
It'd be such a sad way to see you go, man.
Just trying
Tried to pick a gap he couldn't. Well, the other thing is when I'm sitting in that same spot and I'm calculating that risk, I'm also calculating what's the risk that this guy approaching me from behind is actually going to slow down and not rear end me, because there's no turning lane, so you're just like stopped in the middle of a 60-mile-an-hour road.
know.
And that's happened to people right in that spot where they just get rear-ended and end up with like neck problems and stuff. So I'm like looking at the car ahead, checking my rear view mirror, and working out what's the riskiest thing here. And if there's a gap, I'd rather take it before this guy gets too close. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's complex. But when you're making that turn, are you thinking that through on a conscious level? What degree of thought is going into that? Or is it's an impulsive? You just do it. It just
I've been thinking about it a little bit more now that
right.
we're talking about
yeah.
this, but yeah.
And you're irrational doing that?
I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm listening to other podcasts or the radio or music, and my conscious thought of the driving goes away almost entirely.
Absolutely.
And I'm making, my brain is
All
running
the
that
driving is
algorithm on its
autopilot.
own. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So the audience, can kind of determine what you think
Whether
about
or
that.
not he's rational.
Let's throw some other cases out. Playing the lottery.
Yeah.
Now here, the potential, it's kind of like the inverse of the driving example, where you have in this case, you have a really low cost, $1,
Yeah.
and a really high gain. Millions of dollars from the Mega Millions Lotto Ball or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Mega Millions. And a super low chance that you're going to win. Like, incredibly.
What are the odds? Do you know?
Oh, I mean,
I'm sure they change
I
depending on
do
the
not
ticket
know.
or the.
I don't know for sure, but it's 1 in billions.
Yeah, really low.
Yeah. And so I want to say that it's irrational to take the risk of buying a lottery ticket. Now, this is crucial too. What are your purposes in performing the action?
Of buying a lottery ticket.
Yeah. If it's for financial gain, then it is irrational.
It's not the best strategy. It's actually a poor strategy.
It's an
for financial
irrational
gain.
risk to take.
Yes.
You're better off investing that $1. Not as exciting, not as sexy,
No.
but
But okay, but what about the social thrill of scratching a scratchy with your buddies?
that's fun. That's
And, like,
different. So
we
that's a
might
different-
get rich, and there's 60 seconds of us having a fun little fantasy about we might get rich. That's some good. That's a fun way
Right.
to spend a minute.
Like you just spent more than $1 on a Taco Bell
You're gonna tell everyone
with
this?
sour cream that you didn't want,
Yeah,
and
and chucked it in the bin.
so you might as well have played the lottery.
Yeah, I
then.
wish I had. I wish I had bought several lottery tickets instead of that dumb quesarito.
Right. So I mean, in that sense, when your purpose is for entertainment or pleasure, that changes the
Yeah.
equation, because the potential outcome is different in that case.
Yeah.
It still includes the Mega Millions,
But also this social.
of pleasure,
Yeah.
and there's a super high chance that you're going to get that
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
scratch it off.
Almost
you know?
guaranteed. Yeah. So, but you're saying if your goal is financial gain, you are never justified in buying a lottery
Rationally,
ticket.
yeah.
You
I do
you have
wanna say that.
behaved irrationally if you do that. Well, guilty then.
Yeah.
Actually, I've never bought an actual lotto ticket, only scratchies. You ever bought an actual lotto ticket? Like for the Powerball?
Yeah. I
You have?
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they've been given to me as presents
Sure.
and stuff.
Sure.
Um,
Well, what about this idea of where risk and I guess my moral obligations or duties overlap? Like, it's one thing for me to choose on my own to engage in risky behavior, but if I have duties or obligations, moral obligations, say to my family, if I have children, should I avoid certain risky behaviors because of the duties that I have to them? Like my wife, for example, would not like it if I went skydiving or rode a motorcycle. She doesn't
and
really
why?
want me
So
doing
why? Can you say more?
why she doesn't want me doing that?
Yeah.
She's afraid that I will die or hurt myself. And so when it comes to skydiving, I actually don't know the stats on that. I'm sure it's very, very few people who perish from skydiving. So her fear about that might be irrational. But like,
That's kind of wait. Well, let's linger there for a moment. What's interesting there? I'm trying to figure out the rationality of that. The perceived value of the outcome is very low.
Right. She stands to gain very little from me jumping out of a plane.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. She gets to say, "I have a husband who has been skydiving,"
Right,
and that's
right.
about
There's
it.
no upside for her, only downside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So it's not in her interest at all for you to, or the potential loss of a husband is not worth being able to say that your husband has done this thing, right?
Right.
That's a very self-centered view of
Yeah.
decision making
Right.
in a way, and I guess that's kind of the thrust of your question is how should my calculation of risk be others minded?
Yeah. Should that factor into the algorithm at all? Or like maybe it's okay, go with me on this. I'm inventing it as we go. But you know that risk score I came up with earlier?
Yeah.
You calculate the algorithm, it produces some risk value.
Okay.
And then presumably we somewhere have a threshold for, well, if the score is above this, I don't engage. And if the score is below this, I do engage. Maybe it's that our moral obligations to others increase our threshold or lower our increase our threshold. Or am I saying that?
It would
backwards?
lower
our threshold.
Whatever, we get
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You'd be more risk averse if you have kids that you need to take care of, right? There's more on the line.
I think that makes
That's
total
totally
sense
fair.
to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's how I function.
Yeah, like I'd imagine is it so I have chosen to save money aside for my kids' future.
What a guy.
Sorry, I actually haven't done a ton of that. I mean, I'm picturing
you're
myself
telling a story.
in the future.
Yeah.
Suppose that. I'd like to.
Yeah.
For college or a future down payment on their house or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now, what if I had this, a friend came to me, let's say you wanted to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I need $10,000. Is it okay for me to take it out of that fund I had for my kids? Do they have a right to it in some way? That's maybe a whole nother
Wow.
can of worms question, but
Yeah. I want to say no, they don't.
they don't have a right to it.
I don't think you have a right to gifts.
Yeah. But just to know that be sure to include the well-being of others in your potential cost and potential gain, right?
Yeah. That's good.
That's just kind of 101 of not being a jerk, I guess.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm just trying to think through.
Maybe that's not all. This isn't so revelatory, but
Right. Well, that's what I'm trying to work out. We can sit here and talk for however long about risk, but when it comes to how we actually behave in the world, is this something that we ought to be more conscious about? Like, should I be paying more attention to my risk algorithms and like, or like coming out of this discussion? So what? Will anything change in the way that I function in the world, or will I continue to trust my unconscious algorithm processing and my threshold levels wherever they seem to be, and just continue to go through life? Or should I be trying to pay attention to where I'm acting irrationally? Is that the goal?
no, this is helpful. So what you're looking for is an axiom of living.
Yes.
How ought I live?
How would I live?
Great question to always ask. And so let's run through a few options. Never do risky things. Well, impossible, I think,
Never do anything risky.
because any behavior will have a potential cost to it. Almost.
Can you think of one that doesn't? What is a completely risk-free behavior?
No.
Is there anything? Blinking? Is that? No? I can't think of a totally risk-free behavior. Maybe wiggling my ears.
Well, I mean, and maybe this is persnickety, but in the strictest sense of there's a cost, like you expended energy
Calories.
that your body
Might
has.
need those later to run away from a tiger.
Yes. And if you had not blinked so much then, like,
If I hadn't spent those 2 calories wiggling
you
my
made
ears.
your muscle fiber might have been extra energized to escape around the corner. I don't know. I mean,
right.
it's a very low risk behavior.
Yeah.
Very low. Well done. You've succeeded.
But there is some risk always, just because of the uncertainty of the future, like the epistemic position that we're in. We don't know what will happen and how one cause will lead to another effect, and that will lead to another effect. We don't.
Yes.
We don't see all
So
that.
get rid of that axiom.
Okay.
That's stupid.
Never do anything risky. That's bogus.
Now, let's try to fix that little loophole and say, I'll never do anything unnecessarily risky.
Okay, so immediately I want to ask, necessary for what?
Right, and
Towards what end?
that's going to be different for different people. But let's try to slap an objective label on it and say the bottom rung of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. My
Food,
I need to eat,
shelter.
drink, shelter. Yeah,
Bare survival.
protect this corpus.
The carcass, yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps my loved one. That's where this is a threshold conversation
Okay.
too. So that minimal threshold for survivability level of well-being for me and my clan.
Yeah.
So the axiom could be: don't do anything that risks that.
Okay. But
Is that what I said?
that is what
Don't
you
do
said.
anything unnecessarily risky.
Yeah. When necessary is defined as for basic survival.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if we all lived by that axiom,
Do you,
I wanna say-
but don't you live by it? You don't
No.
put life and limb in harm's way.
sure I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I do. Of course. And here's why. I think because
But you can't point to the driving cases and stuff, because that's a necessary risk you need to get to your work to provide food on the table. So I'm saying anything that you do in life to get the basic needs of you and your family met, that's a necessary risk. So I'm saying,
yeah, but I run other risks though.
okay,
For unnecessary pleasure or something, you know? The dumb example, but well, it's not totally dumb because I've done this, but like I remember years ago it was like 3 a.m. and I was driving between states. I was going to surprise Melissa, show up at her college or something. Roads were empty, and I thought, boy, it would just be fun to really gun it. And I just put my foot down and went to like 120 or something, you know, just like flew down the highway. And totally unnecessary. Very fun. Haven't done it again since, but I do engage in unnecessary risks. And so what I was going to say was, if everybody lived by that maxim or axiom of don't risk
it's maxim. I spoke incorrectly.
maxim.
Yeah,
Great. I spoke correctly?
yeah.
Rare. Then I want to say things like technology would never develop and move forward. Like there is this progression to culture and history that have required certain people to take risks. Like exploration wouldn't happen, I don't think, unless you had depleted an area of resources and had to move out of necessity. But not all of our exploration as humans has been out of necessity. And yet, great good has come from it. Maybe incalculable good has come from it.
Yeah.
So
No, you're right.
I'm not sure that... I think we are supposed to be taking risks, stepping into the unknown in different ways.
So that would be, are you saying then, am I permitted to live the life that says don't take unnecessary risks?
Right. Like, are you obligated to take unnecessary risks?
Right. Is it part of the good life to live a life of unnecessary risks? And maybe forgive me if the word unnecessary is tripping us up.
Yeah.
If there's a better word, let me know. But gratuitous risk, over the top.
Well, it's more like this, man. It's more like for some people, what they would consider necessary is the next level up on Maslow's hierarchy. Mm-hmm. It's like there's necessary for survival, and then there's necessary for like emotional fulfillment or meaning.
Yeah.
And so it might be that for some people,
Well, here's what you're trying to say, I think. Some goods are locked behind the door of risk and could
Great.
only be achieved through risk.
that is what I'm. Yeah, that seems obvious.
Or meaning or significance.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
it is kind of obvious, I guess.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a helpful way of thinking about it.
And I think that the life, I mean, certainly the life of the man who stays indoors and never goes outside for risk of sun cancer or whatever, that's an insane, and I think...
Well, what reminded me of that, when you said that, was the parable of the talents.
Oh, sure.
In
the New
Scripture.
Testament, yeah.
So it's Matthew 25, 14 through 30. And Jesus is telling a parable of this master of coin or whatever.
I don't think he's a master of coin.
That's a title in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, he's some wealthy master of men.
Let's modernize it. It's a wealthy businessman.
Yeah.
He's going away on a trip. He has these 3 stewards or little financial analysts, and he gives one guy 5 bags of gold, one guy 2 bags of gold, and the other guy 1 bag of gold.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't even know if he gives them instruction. I'm blanking.
No, it doesn't say. I'm going to leave for a while.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah.
That's basically
But presumably, he's put them in charge of money, so do money things with it.
Yeah.
And so the 1 bag guy buried it in the ground, and the master comes back, hey, your bag of gold is intact. I've lost nothing. Risk-averse.
Yeah. I didn't risk it.
He got throttled.
I kept it safe.
He got reamed by the master.
Yeah, he did.
He took it away and gave it to one of the other guys.
Yeah.
The 5 and the 2 bag guy both doubled.
They both doubled it, which, I mean, well done. That's a good investment. If you've doubled your money.
Yeah.
And however
How long was the trip?
I don't know. Yeah, and then the dude who did not take any risk seems to have been chewed out for it.
Now, what I want in the story is a 4th guy.
Yeah.
That's not in there.
Okay.
I would like Jesus to talk about the guy who was given 4 bags of gold, but he lost 2 of them.
And he lost them, yeah. Yeah, or lost all of them.
Would you rather be the guy who lost 2 when you started with 4, or the 1 bag guy
Who buried it. Yeah.
Or even, let's make it more fair. The 4 bag guy who loses 2, and a 3 bag guy that stayed with 3.
Right.
Who gets chewed out?
I still reckon the 3-man gets
He gets
chewed
in trouble.
out,
He didn't
and
take a risk.
The bloke who took a risk and lost is at least patted on the back for trying. I think it's something like that.
That's what you want to say.
But I mean, there's multiple readings to that parable.
Sure.
It's not cut and dry. It's pretty.
But I think it helps. Maybe just a roundabout way of asking: is there still? Of course, there probably is, but meaning and significance in a life where risks were taken and failure occurred.
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah. I mean, I think stepping into the unknown and grappling with risk in the pursuit of some good, a genuine good, and failing at that is still deeply meaningful. Like if you have, let's create some story.
Yeah.
You want to feed homeless people in Africa, so you you try to start a non-profit, and 4 years into it, something happens and it kind of crumbles and it turns out to be a bit of a failure. I still think that's really meaningful that you tried that and that you took the risk. So I want to say meaning isn't found only in overcoming risk and succeeding.
Yeah, man.
It is found there.
That's helpful.
But I think it's found in grappling with risk in pursuit of the good.
And what I find fascinating about the topic is it touches on like a lot of areas of life.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well, if we say everything carries with it some
Yeah.
risk, then the
or
whole
like
lot.
think of the countless like soldiers who have perished in war.
Yeah.
Who in a way didn't succeed in some kind of mission. Like,
Right.
Presumably, part of the goal would be to survive
Right.
the mission, and
Right.
And for whatever reason that didn't happen. It would be too rough to say like now that's devoid of meaning.
That was meaningless. That
Yeah.
sacrifice.
We celebrate it as virtue, courageous, brave,
Yeah.
sacrificial.
Right.
So then, the third maxim on the table is take some unnecessary risks. But the problem with that, here's always
Which ones?
This is always the problem in philosophy is that you get the more clarity you get, the more right something seems, the more vague it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. It's very general.
Yeah,
Yeah. Take some unnecessary risks.
sure. I can get on board with that. And the $32,000 question is, what is my limit?
Yeah.
What are those unnecessary risks that I ought not take? Is the lottery in there? Well, again, purpose driven. Why are you doing it? For financial gain? It is not wise.
Do you think then that it's entirely subjective whether or not you're justified in pursuing a given risk? Like, let's say you have an unnecessary risk that you feel like you should pursue. You come to me for counsel and I say, Seems risky. No, you should not. I don't have immediate access to the value that you're placing on the expected outcome or the desired outcome. Just like Alex, for him climbing this cliff was like, that's what I got to do. And for you, you couldn't give a rip. So is it's ultimately left up to us to figure this out in ourselves? I should pursue this unnecessary risk and nobody can tell me otherwise.
No, not quite.
Okay.
It depends how you're using the word subjective. That is the type of activity it is, and how I calculate that or run that algorithm depends on value that I as a subject gave to it. Now, I think part of being rational and practicing the intellectual virtues is receiving counsel from others, and that might make me tweak how I valued certain things.
Sure.
So I should be, gathering intel from a lot of different sources, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, there might be objective reasons to change how I subjectively perceive something.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's
I
fine.
don't know if that's just an annoying philosopher's wordy way of saying it, but
No, that's good.
so yeah, I think that's basically how most people live their life, is that third maxim. Take some unnecessary risks, identify what brings meaning and significance and value to life. And maybe it might require putting some of those things on the Maslow hierarchy on the line somewhat.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's these other tiers of the pyramid, and maybe we
What's
can
at the top? Do you remember?
self-actualization,
Oh, sure. Wow. Okay.
for what it's worth.
Yep.
And so different people might feel more comfortable putting different brackets of this pyramid on the line.
Yeah.
Some people take out extra mortgages on their house to go after a business idea.
Yeah.
And is that rational? Man, that's so hard for me to say.
Yeah.
Certainly a risk. I don't know if that's helpful, but I just, I wanted to explore the notion of risk. I saw someone doing something extremely risky to me.
Yeah. It made my stomach turn.
Wanted to understand it more.
Yeah.
All right, well.
Yeah, we'd love to know what you think. If you have thoughts, if you think we're way off base, love to know that as well. So leave a comment right into the show. Where can they reach us?
They can reach us at opentotruthpodcast@gmail.com.
Beautiful.
Facebook, we're on there.
Yep.
YouTube comments, and we will respond.
Yeah, I would love to interact with you. So if you've got something to say, by all means, like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you
Alrighty.
next time.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye.